Hello and welcome back to Shock's Talks. I'm Shakti, and today we're diving right into the alien abduction phenomena. So below I've linked a video from Richard Dolan again, and it's an interview with Dr. David Jacobs. Jacobs worked with Bud Hopkins, a famous abduction researcher and hypnotherapist. He has a PhD in history. He's a historian. He was a professor at Temple University, a hypnotherapist, and the author of multiple books on alien abductions and UFOs. In this interview, Dolan is basically asking Jacobs what his take on all of this is. And on this channel, we've talked about the spectrum of theories. For example, at one end, you have Stephen Greer claiming there are no bad ETs because in order to reach the level of technological advancement that they have, they would have had to advance in other ways too, maybe emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And many people share this view and like to point to the fact that although an alien presence has been detected, there are no openly hostile events to suggest that their intentions are malicious. Jacobs is on the other end of the spectrum. He believes that aliens are here to take over this planet. He is mainly focused on recent events, basically looking at the past 80 to 100 years, which is the timeline I've been covering in this series. And he mentions that it's possible that visitations could have occurred in the past, but whatever we're seeing today in terms of the activities seem to be more focused, as in some kind of agenda is being carried out methodically over time. He makes the point, and I've heard this from others too, that typically abduction happens over time in families, generation after generation. So it's very common for it to occur in one person and then their kids and so on. This pattern is an important piece of the puzzle to researchers who are trying to see the big picture. Whatever is happening is not a random grab bag of genetic testing. It appears to be a program and it's ongoing. Other abduction researchers, such as Yvonne Smith, have come to similar conclusions. Although there is still uncertainty as to what these programs are all about, some abductees are given urgent messages and seem to be concerned with humanity's dangerous choices, making it seem possible that aliens are trying to support a better outcome for us on Earth through messaging and specifically showing abductees various future possibilities. This occurs on screens, on craft, and through direct mental projections. This kind of reminds me of Tom Campbell's concept of accessing the database. Similar to remote viewing or having a non-local experience of data, any and all paranormal occurrences such as telepathy, contact with the dead or ghosts, spirits, angels, demons, and all the rest of it, this could be considered simply interfacing with the larger consciousness system. So it's possible that Campbell might say that alien abduction experiences are simply human consciousness interfacing with the larger consciousness system and interpreting the data in a specific way. And this is like along the lines of visions or, just messages that people get in their minds from maybe the universe or a part of themselves. Campbell has this theory where the very nature of reality is consciousness. Consciousness is the computer, and it is organized into various experience systems. So in his theory, we are in physical matter reality. This reality would be considered a subset of a larger reality system, which would include the non-physical, and so on and so on. Because we ourselves are also consciousness, we have the ability to access data from beyond the limitations of the physical matter reality that we are primarily experiencing in. Campbell also emphasizes the importance of reducing fear in order to expand consciousness, and even refers to experiences that he calls fear tests, which are common among people who travel out of body or access data non-locally. I could imagine some of these encounters being similar to an unexpected near-death experience or out-of-body experience where some higher intelligence puts an individual consciousness through some simulations in order to stimulate growth or teach someone an important lesson. Some people claim to be able to access the database at will, exploring through their own consciousness various future possibilities and probabilities in order to make choices that align with the desired outcome. The thing about alien abduction stories, however, is that many people who are going through these things are ending up with physical effects on their bodies. And while some cases seem to occur at night and possibly during a sleep cycle, many others happen in broad daylight, while driving or walking, and they are all so specific and similar. They also often occur alongside UFO sightings, and these reports are coming from multiple people who do not have awareness of one another. It would be so interesting to gain a better understanding of what is going on in the brain and body during various paranormal states, such as channeling, remote viewing, hallucinations, ET downloads, and accessing probable futures. One thing we could probably find out is whether or not a person is accessing data from beyond their own mind or generating things in their imagination. I would love to know more about how brain scans could help to make sense of all of this. In the book Chosen, Yvonne Smith states, in a recent study, the person who channeled information from a remote or unknown source had no brain activity in the areas of the brain that would be active if the information were coming from the subject themselves. In other words, the areas of the brain that should be active have no brain activity where a channeled message is being conveyed. It's as if the person's brain activity stands down to allow the channeled message to come through unfiltered. So back to Jacobs. He seems to take people's abduction experiences pretty seriously, and by gathering anecdotal data over time, he outlined the relationship between various alleged alien races. In his theory, insectoids, or what some call insectolins, seem to be at the top of this particular group of various races working together on hybridization programs. These beings are rarely seen in abduction events, but sometimes reported as being on the craft. They are said to be tall and bug-like. They sometimes appear as praying mantis-like beings. In the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac by Craig Campobasso, there are 3 types of insectoids listed: mantis beings, gray insectoids, and Sirian insectoids. Some people think the mantis beings are helping with starseed programs and working with human DNA to upgrade us and to support our well-being. Clearly, Jacobs has a slightly different take. Another race reported are reptilians. They are observed on craft, but the worker races carrying out whatever tests are going on are usually the tall and short grays, and they are operating in a hierarchical way, according to Jacobs. Based on his research, the talls have certain tasks, and the short grays seem to be more along the lines of a cleanup crew or lowest level worker. Jacobs believes that gray aliens were created using some human DNA and that they are serving the insectoids. Again, insectoids are in the background or at the top of this chain. Reptilians have been seen on the craft as well, and grays are the workforce being sent down to Earth. Many abductees report being visited by, escorted by, and experimented on by the grays. Now, as I go through all of this, I know it can seem totally wild and ridiculous, so think of it as lore if you're having a hard time or a strong reaction to the information. No one really knows for sure what all of this means or what's really going on, at least no one I know of yet, but these things are happening to people. And even if it's all happening in the mind, it still makes me ask questions and want to know more, and it's hard to separate this from the UFO phenomena because many abductions occur right after a UFO sighting. We know that today, many world governments, and as of a week or so ago, NASA as well, are openly studying and speaking more about the topic. They refer to all of this as UAP, or unidentified aerial phenomena. Along with abduction stories, other inexplicable phenomena has been occurring at places like Skinwalker Ranch, and there are also UFOs being seen and documented there. And we'll get into that more later, but for now, it makes sense in my mind to consider the experiencer side of this as we continue to expand our understanding of UFOs, the nature of reality, and maybe even our own true nature. The big question for me today is, are UFOs and aliens subject to the rules of physical matter reality as we know it, or are they reaching us from a larger reality frame beyond our own? And if so, why? And this is kind of pointing to the Tom Campbell theory. Are these just other forms of consciousness in other reality frames that we are interpreting through our limited lenses and we're calling them aliens? Or are they physical beings similar to us coming from other physical places and visiting the Earth with technologies so advanced that we can't yet comprehend them? It all seems possible to me, and I'm really not sure which way I'm leaning right now. My other questions, I also want to know if we are as confined as we imagine, or if our idea of reality is just so limited that we find what could be considered normal through a different framework, paranormal, through our narrow lens. That sounds very confusing when I just read it to myself. So what I basically mean by that is like, is the paranormal really normal, but we just don't have an expanded enough understanding of reality to consider it as such? What kind of science is being kept from the public and why? And will there come a day when non-human entities walk beside us on this earth? Will it be harmonious or disastrous? So maybe something in the middle. This is interesting to me. As we continue to look at abduction, there is this memory repression aspect that often leads people to hypnotic regression. Something that I learned from Jacobs in this interview was that he thinks hypnotic regression needs to span a few sessions, not just one, because in his experience, the first session is often jumbled, and as time goes on, people learn how to access their memories. This is a fascinating observation, and it just made me think, if I or you or anyone you know ever chooses to try hypnotic regression, it may be wise to plan multiple sessions over time. I'd just never considered this before. Most of the people I've read about have worked in this way, and it seems like sometimes a feeling of safety has to be established, and sometimes one memory unlocks another. It's just a very curious process because we don't often go digging up trauma for no reason. But if you need to work through something in life, sometimes bringing it into the light helps. And for researchers of the phenomena, the more cases and data, the better. It's through this process that patterns can be identified over time. A larger story arc emerges. So, according to Jacobs, for most people, you don't remember everything all at once. There is some training required, and you have to be trained to think chronologically. Now, Dolan brings up a conflicting theory here. He points to a study done by an organization called FREE, and it's called Beyond UFOs. It's about people who have had self-reported abduction experiences. They come to a radically opposite conclusion to Jacobs. They think that these beings are positive and generally here to help us. What Dolan notices, though, is that the data is coming from an in-depth questionnaire and not from ongoing hypnotic regression sessions. Dr. Jacobs does not feel that this is a valid way of gathering data. He says you can't take a survey of people and just conclude this is the way it is. He makes the point that he prefers this was all for good, as in he would love it if aliens were here to help us, but he's going along with what people tell him and what they have actually experienced. People who are university professors, MDs, attorneys, people with PhDs, people who have normal jobs, and people who don't have jobs and can't get it together. It doesn't matter what country they come from, they're all saying the same things. He says he's not trying to get anyone to say anything, he's just asking very direct questions in the sessions, like, when you walk down the hall, did you turn left into the room or right into the room, for example? In terms of alien-human hybrids, Jacobs states that it is extremely common for women abductees to be impregnated, and then 8 to 10 weeks later, the fetus is removed in abduction and taken aboard the UFO. According to Jacobs, Bud Hopkins was the first to discover this many years ago. He talked about a woman on board a UFO. The aliens showed her a baby. It was a weird-looking baby, a hybrid. The aliens wanted her to feed the baby, but she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to. They forced her to put it to her breast anyway, and somehow lactation had been stimulated, and she was, in fact, able to nurse the hybrid. There are many other stories like this from abductees. Men and women being taken on craft and shown children or babies or even fetuses in tubes or tanks. They are often asked to give the children love or affection or make a bond with them because they are not yet thriving. These accounts are common, and these hybrids are said to be raised on the craft. So that's a little bit about the possible hybridization programs. I'm sure we'll talk about it more as time goes on and as I read more books about this. But I can't close this out without restating a point that Jacobs makes towards the end of the interview linked below. He brings up the fact that even if this were a mass delusion, one where people from all walks of life and all around the globe are reporting similar experiences, scientists should be interested. He's shocked that we will put funds and energy towards programs to analyze the tech or the shell, as in the craft, without prioritizing what is most important, which is what is within. He imagines that if we put thousands of scientists on it, we could really start to understand what's going on. I know there are so many other things we want to put our energy towards as people in general. For those who have never experienced anything out of the ordinary, putting funds towards this type of science seems completely absurd. All I can say is that I get it. For me, someone who has had a number of unexplained experiences throughout the course of my life, I definitely want to know more. Some might feel that if these theories prove to be true and highly advanced aliens are slowly and methodically infiltrating Earth and learning about humankind while simultaneously working with our genetics in order to take over this planet, we are completely out of our league here. But Jacobs points out the fact that these aliens do operate in secrecy. He thinks that this could mean there's a risk for them. If we were to gain awareness of the situation, maybe they wouldn't have the level of control they seek. If they are so advanced and so in control, why wouldn't they come out and do this takeover in the open? What is the point of hiding? It's interesting to think about, and that's where we'll leave that for now. These theories focus on the physical side of the phenomena: abduction, genetic testing, ongoing programs, and reproduction. On the next episode, we're going to take a turn and get even weirder as we explore another side: possible psychological experimentation and energy manipulation. So this is the fringe of the fringe, but I do find it interesting. There are a few different theories floating around when it comes to unseen interference with human emotions by non-human entities. Some people think of this in terms of demons or interdimensional beings. I think everything is possible, but we're going to take a look at what some believe is ET-related interference. I'm going to start with a brief introduction to Eve Lorgen's love bite theory. Again, this work is based on people's experiences and anomalous traumas, and the researcher is looking at a body of data and drawing conclusions or producing theories based on patterns. So Eve Lorgen has 2 books: The Dark Side of Cupid, Love Affairs, the Supernatural, and Energy Vampirism, and The Love Bite, Alien Interference in Human Love Relationships. The following is from the foreword to The Dark Side of Cupid, and it relates to our conversation from today, and this is by Nigel Kerner. Stephen Hawking and Michio Kaku both believe that not only is it likely that civilizations exist on other planets, but also that such civilizations may well be superior to us in technological development, and for that reason will be predatory towards lesser species. They will be towards us as we are towards animals. David Jacobs and the late great Bud Hopkins have reported a huge acceleration in what they have termed the hybrid program over the last 20 years. They base this on abduction accounts. This acceleration seems to be paralleled by enormous leaps in technological development in fields such as artificial intelligence and biotechnology that make Ray Kurzweil's transhumanist dream look more and more possible. If that dream is their agenda and the hybrid program and our own technological development are indeed connected, then we are heading towards a future in which our humanity is controlled and dominated by a technologically advanced intelligence converting us into its own format. If such is the case, then Eve Lorgen's book is of great import to us all and very timely in its publication. So that's our teaser for Eve Lorgen, and we'll get into more of her theories in the next episode. And one final current event, there's a new website up that I want you to take a look at, and that is uapcaucus.com. It's linked in the description below. And I told you about the TikTok creator a few episodes back. He goes by Elroy Spacely on that platform. His name is Nare, and I adore all of his content because he's incredibly smart and straightforward. So this is his website that he put together. And I just found out that he has made a YouTube as well. So his TikTok content is now on YouTube. I'm linking that below so that you can check it out. And I think you should definitely follow him. You're going to love it. It's really, really cool. And he has all like the editing and shows you the articles and all the stuff. All the stuff I wish I could do. I'll get there one day. But he also has a newsroom on the website so you can look at relevant articles to UAP legislation. So he did mention in one of his videos recently that since the launch of his website, he has been contacted by a number of prominent figures in the field. So that's kind of interesting and exciting. And I also heard Jeremy Corbell mention him on the Weaponized podcast recently. So good job, Lester. And he is, according to the internet, he's a graduate of Princeton University. He focuses mostly on the politics and legislation around UAP. And right now he's encouraging people to help push forward the Schumer-Rounds amendment, which we did talk about in earlier episodes here. So here is a reminder and a description of that amendment for anyone who's not familiar. This initiative advocates for the immediate establishment of a UAP disclosure review board. The board will be enacted under the Schumer-Rounds Amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act for 2024, colloquially known as the UAP Disclosure Act of 2024. The review board will be responsible for the systematic analysis of UAP data gathered not just by military and intelligence agencies, but also from civilian sources. This multidisciplinary body will consist of experts in fields ranging from aerospace, engineering, to behavioral psychology. Behavioral psychology, this is what we talked about today. The overarching aim is to provide a comprehensive, unbiased review of UAP phenomena to Congress and the American public. So this is the next step for Congress, and we'll stay tuned and see what happens with this amendment. That's it for today. Thanks always for listening, and thank you to everyone who has subscribed. I'm honored. I hope this got your wheels turning. I feel so interested in this topic, and I'm glad that you are too. And I will see you next time for Shocks Talks episode lucky number 13.